Hi everyone, I'm Paul. One of the things I've been thinking about a lot recently is how midlife is often talked about as if it's the beginning of the end. As if by this point the big decisions have already been made. As if you're supposed to have settled down, stopped questioning things and just quietly carry on. And I understand why people think like that, because for a long time I probably did too. But if I'm honest, I don't think midlife has felt like the end of anything for me. If anything, it's felt more like the start of something better. Not easier, not more polished, not suddenly full of certainty, but more honest, more intentional, and more alive. And I wanted to talk a bit about that in this video. I think a lot of us grow up with a fairly fixed idea of how life is supposed to go. You work hard, you build a career, you try to be sensible, you make responsible decisions. And somewhere along the way, you're meant to arrive at this point where life feels sorted. But I think for a lot of people, especially in midlife, that isn't actually how it feels. Sometimes it feels more like you've done what you're supposed to do, but there's still a voice in the background asking, is this it? Not in an ungrateful way, not in a dramatic way, just in a very honest way. And I think that can be quite unsettling, because by this age, you almost feel like you shouldn't still be asking those questions. You're supposed to know who you are. You're supposed to have it all worked out. You're supposed to stop changing. But I'm not sure that's true at all. For me, I think midlife has a way of bringing things to the surface. Things you've ignored, things you've put off, things you've told yourself you deal with later. It can make you realize how much of life you've spent being practical, responsible, and realistic while quietly pushing your own wants further and further down the list. And I don't say that with regret exactly. I think a lot of us do the best we can with the life we have at the time. But there does come a point when you start paying more attention. You start thinking more seriously about time, about energy, about what still matters, about what kind of life actually feels like your life rather than just the one you've drifted into. And I think that's one of the reasons midlife can feel uncomfortable, because it asks more honest questions. If you told me years ago that I'd be in my 50s living in South America, trying to build a different kind of life, starting a YouTube channel and still learning as I go, I honestly don't think I would have believed you, because none of that looked like the safe or obvious route. It wasn't some grand master plan. A lot of it came from real life shifting, from things changing, from me getting to a point where I had to ask myself whether I wanted to keep living in the same way or whether I was actually willing to try something different. And trying something different sounds exciting when you say it quickly. But in reality, it can be awkward, it can be messy, it can knock your confidence, it can make you feel behind, it can make you question yourself constantly. Starting a YouTube channel in midlife has felt like that at times. Becoming a digital nomad has felt like that too. Even just speaking more openly about where I'm at in my life has felt uncomfortable. But I think that's part of it. Doing something new later in life doesn't usually come wrapped in confidence. It often comes wrapped in doubt. The reason I say midlife might be the start of something better is not because life suddenly becomes easier. It's because I think you start seeing things more clearly. You care a little less about pretending. You become more aware of how precious time is. You start recognizing what matters more and what matters less. And sometimes, for the first time in a long time, you become more willing to be honest with yourself about what you want, about what isn't working, about what you still want to try, about what you don't want to keep tolerating. And that honesty can change a lot. It doesn't mean you suddenly blow your life up and reinvent everything overnight, but it can mean you start making smaller, braver decisions. You try the thing, you say the thing, you begin the project, you book the trip, you have the conversation. You stop waiting for some imaginary version of yourself to finally appear. And I think that can be the beginning of something better. Not because everything becomes perfect, but because it starts to become more real. I also think it's important to say that better doesn't always mean shinier. Sometimes better means more aligned. Sometimes better means calmer. Sometimes better means finally feeling like your outside life matches what's going on inside. For me, better has not meant having everything sorted. It hasn't meant feeling confident all the time. It hasn't meant that fear disappears. It hasn't meant I suddenly know exactly where everything is going. But it has meant movement. It has meant growth. It has meant stretching myself. It has meant making choices that feel more like mine. And I think there's something really powerful in that. Because when you get to midlife, you realize that there is still time to change things. Maybe not in the same way you would have done at 25, but maybe in a better way for who you are now. So no, I don't think midlife is the end. Far from it. I think for a lot of us, it can actually be the point where life starts becoming more honest. The point where you stop living quite so much on autopilot. The point where you realize that being older doesn't mean you're finished. It might just mean you're finally ready to start paying attention to what really matters. And maybe that's the beginning of something better. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.